Hello there and welcome back to another review. So let's look at some more Van Damme movies, shall we? Not just any Van Damme movies, but let's look at some early efforts from Jean-Claude. And today we're going to be looking at Cyborg, made back in 1989. Now the interesting trivia for this movie is that Canon Films were originally going to make a sequel to Dolph Lundgren's Masters of the Universe. And I believe a live action Spider-Man movie was also talked about or planned as well. However, Canon was facing financial trouble, right? Masters didn't do as well as they hoped and the sequel sort of fell through, but they had already spent I think around $2 million on sets and costumes, and this is where Cyborg comes in. The storyline I think took a weekend to pen. The film shot in about 23 days. I mean, talk about a speedy process, and believe you and me, it shows in this movie. It really does show. Interestingly, Van Damme had a choice of either doing this, Delta Force 2 or American Ninja 3 after his success in Bloodsport, and I think, to be honest, whatever film he chose, it was never going to set the box office alight. So whether he took Cyborg or American Ninja 3, I think either way it was still, the result would have still been the same. I think someone even lost an eye in this movie when Van Damme accidentally struck him with like a prop knife. The film I think cost around $500,000 to make. And we have loads of characters named after music manufacturers and guitar models for some reason. There's Marshall Strat, Fender Tremolo, Gibson Rickenbacker. It just, okay. Wasn't this also the last, am I correct in saying this was the last film released by the Canon Group? I think it was definitely one of their last. I'm sure many of you out there know a lot more than me. But I think it may have been the last film released by Canon, because they've done the Masters of the Universe, which I absolutely love. It's one, I think it's a fantastic movie. Loved it ever since I was very young. I think it's a great cult movie. But I think that sort of didn't do nowhere near as well as they hoped, and as I say, I think this movie Cyborg might have been one of the last ones they did. Now make no mistake, this is low budget filmmaking at its very finest. The dialogue is absolutely horrendous, the plot is super thin, there's hardly any background information. Even when growing up watching this movie, I knew it was bad, right? I knew it was bad. I didn't necessarily think it was as tacky and cheesy as like I do watching it in recent years, but when I was like young watching it, it was one of them sort of, compared to like Bloodsport or Kickboxer, I mean this was just, it was very different. It wasn't like necessarily what you was expecting or wanting, but that's not to take anything away from Van Damme at all. It's largely due to the script, the budget, everything like that just unfortunately does impede Cyborg somewhat. But so in then I just was like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, it is cheese. I mean, it's obvious they were sort of trying to do like a Mad Max thing mixed with some like sort of Terminator and a slice of Blade Runner, but unfortunately the film just has no real focus. The screenplay, the acting and the direction are subpar, to put it mildly, and Van Damme, like I say, he's okay in the film. It's just like though the filmmakers never take any real time or effort to sort of explain what kind of universe the story is happening in, and unfortunately the lack of real substantial budget really does show. Plus, with a movie called Cyborg, you would expect there to be loads of robots and actual, cyborgs in it. Not the case. I mean, obviously Van Damme deserved better than this. It's one of them films you can just watch to see how bad it is and how so little of it makes sense. But at the same time, I so miss the days, like I said in my American Ninja review, when you could do silly, absurd cheese fest B-grade action movies, and people like young boys like myself could just sit back, relax, enjoy them, and just lose themselves with all the violence and the action, God knows what else. And to its credit though, it is a way to get what I'm not going to bash Cyborg any more than I have to, but to its credit though, it was a way to get Van Damme out of that sort of one-on-one ring type kickboxing fighting type of category, where he's sort of push him out a bit, get him more into get him out of just doing, okay, it's another tournament film. Like, let's try Van Damme at some sci-fi, something he would later accomplish really well with the likes of, Universal Soldier. So it's the end of civilization, right? It's the end of civilization as it would be. There is a plague. It really could have done with an opening scroll rather than just like a voiceover. It could have done with like a Star Wars, just a little scroll, just 3 or 4 paragraphs, just explaining where we are, what's going on, and, but anything. So we cut to this guy and this girl named Pearl trying to escape from Fender Tremolo and his pirates, and you can tell it's all very Mad Max territory here. Anyway, she has information for a cure, right? Get a weird credit sequence over some burning flames, and then boom, suddenly here is Van Damme kicking some pirates as Pearl is on the run and he saves her. She wants to go to Atlanta. She has info and wants to see these doctors about the plague, right? See, she is a cyborg, and then when she takes her wig off, the animation is more akin to something from like the original Clash of the Titans. Then the film just starts like there's no other people here, there's no scope. You know, again, it would have been good if we would have had a bit more of a setup. No idea about why Van Damme was randomly there and what he was doing. No idea how she got this information. Van Damme plays Gibson Rickenbacker, by the way. We have a flashback and learn that Van Damme gets people out of the city, you see, and he's like, that's what he does. And check out his hair and sort of these flashbacks too. Anyway, Gibson is after like Fender, who's taken a boat at this point in the movie, and even though the lighting isn't great, he's still like with Fender, the lighting's not great, but he keeps his shades on the whole time. But anyway, he's taking this boat. Pearl gets taken, and Gibson and this girl Nady walk through the wasteland. They get ambushed by some guys, and for some reason she runs into this abandoned building for no reason whatsoever to start looking around. She gets ambushed by these guys with chains and masks. Van Damme saves her, and he has the whole knife in the shoe trick, which I always thought, I mean, if my movie knowledge is anything to go by, it's usually the villains, isn't it? They usually have the knife in the foot, but here it's actually him, like the knife in the shoe trick, but here it's actually him that does. Naturally, he roundhouses a guy with it and slices his throat. So they get to the ocean. It's worth noting that we are a half hour in right now to the movie, and we're still getting flashbacks, right? Like real important stuff, like Gibson and his ex-missus getting it on. And wouldn't it have been much better to do all these flashbacks in one segment, rather than like interspersing them in like little segments? Rather not just do a 6-7 minute flashback and then we can just get on with the movie. But we're half hour in and we're still getting flashbacks. We then get another flashback to how Pearl agreed to be a cyborg. Anyway, Spot spent like Fender's boat. Weird how none of the goons below deck actually talk, though he doesn't just know where it is. I thought like sometime all of a sudden he doesn't know where the boat is, and he's like, I thought you were watching the boat, and then he doesn't know where it is anyway. And it's amazing how much use the film just makes use of random open buildings and factories and sort of warehouses, that kind of thing. Again, you're not really too sure what kind of universe we're in, because it only seems to be the characters that are sort of in the movie that are in the movie. Like, there doesn't seem to be any bystanders or people walking around. It's just, like I say, it does make so much use of just these open abandoned factories. And there are some awful wigs in the movie, and to be honest, with a bigger budget, more scope, and more exterior shots and things like that, and a bit more narrative, this could have been an okay movie. For example, Van Damme's look in the film is great, and the whole movie is just silly, stupid entertainment. So Fender's men sort of chase him, and suddenly people have suddenly the people have disappeared, and all of Fender's goons, all Fender's goons do is just scream and shout. While they are after him so bad, you have the cyborg, whatever. So they have to make sure Van Damme does the splits in the movie, as they had to do with all of his early efforts. They always had to make sure he gets the splits in. It was part of the thing. Like, you see a Van Damme movie, he just has to do the splits. He done it in Time Cop, he done it in No Retreat, No Surrender, he does it here. So Gibson and Nady run across a field pursued by Fender's men, all on foot, by the way. I mean, there's hardly any vehicles in the movie whatsoever. Road Warrior this is not, and it's amazing how much of it is shot in slow motion too, from Fender's crew running to Van Damme and Fender's men just staring at each other. It's almost like I said, they're just trying to eat up the screen time. Like, let's just film that in slow motion, that'll kill a couple of minutes. In case you haven't guessed, the music is largely forgettable as well. Despite it being like set in an apocalyptic world, the film is actually bright and sunny throughout, so they managed to overpower Van Damme, and Fender beats the crap out of him, and it's really, as I say, it really did need some dialogue here, to sort of make the scene. Plus it's like all shot from one angle as well. And just when you think he's going to say something, he headbutts him, right? And again, the dialogue in the film is non-existent, and when it does happen, it's just throwaway, forgettable garbage. So all Fender's crew do is stand there and stare, like they did on the boat. Like, they do nothing, and like when they beat Van Damme, they string him up like sort of Jesus Christ of Nazareth at one point. Also, why doesn't Fender ever clean his glasses? I mean, they're covered in dirt, sand, and all sorts. No idea where Pearl is at this stage. Like, all urgency for this cure for this plague has gone out the window. The amount of times when Fender talks and facing away from the camera is really off-putting too. So yeah, they've strung like Rickenbacker up, and one of Fender's crew is like a girl from the woman he knew in the past, and yep, guess what? another flashback. We get lines like, "This is going to be our home, stay with us." Now that's some character development right there. That and some kissing apparently is all you need, to show apparently when doing these flashbacks to give you more depth with this character. So we watch Gibson screaming his arse off if he's trying to break free from this thing, and this goes on and on as it do. Like, this is what would happen when you've got no story to tell. It just goes on and on with him trying to break free from this thing. We then see that Van Damme and his squeeze were dropped down a well again in the flashback, and somehow, like, he survived, but she didn't, and what are the odds and chances he would just so happen to run into Fender again? How did Fender randomly find Pearl? I mean, there's just so many questions. This film will leave you with more, so many questions, honestly, it really will. So Nady comes to his aid. We do actually get some much needed dialogue between Fender and Pearl about what is in Atlanta as they walk. It's like, finally, some plot development. You're actually fleshing out the plot a little bit. Now somehow Van Damme what gets me is, bearing in mind they set off, somehow Van Damme gets there before Fender, knows exactly where he's coming from and waits for him. Somehow Van Damme is just like, God knows how he's got there quick, I have no idea, but no idea. And now it's like, again, where this has come from, he now has a proper bow and arrow. Like, where from? Where did he get this bow and arrow? We get Van Damme topless with thunder and rain, and funny how for a movie called Cyborg there really isn't a lot of Cyborg in it. And it would have been nice if they fleshed out some of Fender's men too. The better we get our lines like, "I kill slingers." Like, with his men, his crew, they have got no personality whatsoever. And also a backstory to Fender would have been an idea too. Why couldn't they flesh out our villain more? So worth mentioning here, we're about 1 hour 12 minutes into the movie, and this is the end of the movie. We're at the finale. Rather than have any dialogue when they meet, let's just have Gibson and Fender stare at each other before the fight begins. Again, when you can't be bothered to write any dialogue, when you've got no budget and you've got time restraints, let's just have them stare at each other. And that's just, that's all we get. As if that's good enough. Believe me, Fender's grunts and screams get so tiresome, and you thought old school kung fu movies were light on plot. You check Cyborg out, honestly, just check Cyborg out. So after an average fight, Van Damme stabs him, and then he comes back to, he gets sort of impaled on a hook. Loads of things in this movie are either barely explained, glanced over, or not explained at all. Who was Pearl working for? Where did she get the data from? At one point she agrees to go with Fender and not Gibson. Nady dies too, again knew nothing about her, ends with Pearl saying, "I think he is the real cure for this world," and that's the end. So did this data help? What was the data? As I say, massive plot holes, the story incoherent, terrible to little no dialogue, awful music score, but as I say, even I don't give Cyborg, although it feels like I'm ranting at the movie, believe me I'm not. Well, maybe a little bit. But what the shame with Cyborg is one of them films that, as I say, with a bit more time, effort, money, scope and vision, basically a bit more of everything. This could have been actually a great sort of sci-fi action adventure for Van Damme. I think the problem I've always had with Cyborg is there was no reason for it to be this bad. Like, there was no reason. Like, okay, your setup's okay-ish. Like, this woman's got some data. She's a cyborg. She's needing to get somewhere. Van Damme has to escort her. That's fine. But then, like I say, it's just there's a lot of things that just needed to be improved upon to sort of make the film less crappy than what it is. Unfortunately, it falls short on everything it sets out to achieve. But let me know, as I say, in terms of Cyborg, I do apologise if you are fans of the movie and it sounds like I'm bashing it. It's one of the movies I can watch just for sort of the silly, laughable factor of what it is. But back in the day, I was never a huge fan of Cyborg. I've seen it loads of times over the years, and unfortunately, it's one of them sort of, I just felt Van Damme deserved better. I've always felt that with Cyborg, and there was even Cyborg franchise. There was Cyborg 2. I think there was Cyborg 3 as well, wasn't there? But as I say, you have to let me know what you guys thought of Cyborg. Do you think it's as bad as what some people say? I mean, to many of you, it might even be one of your favourite Van Dammes, for all I know. But let me know what you thought of Cyborg. How do you rank it in terms of Van Damme movies, and make sure to let me know what you think. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.
Concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.